I spent my daughter's college fund on a new house after she sided with my cheating ex's mistress and called her mom. Now, she's begging me for forgiveness. I'm a 44-year-old woman, and my daughter, Mia, is 18. She's supposed to start college soon. But things have been a mess ever since I filed for divorce from my husband of 20 years, Jonathan, 45. He'd been having an affair with his secretary, Alicia, who's 34. The affair lasted nearly a year before he finally admitted it, and I moved out the same day. I'd hoped Mia would take my side, considering I was clearly the one who'd been wronged, but she didn't, for reasons I couldn't understand. She stuck with Jonathan. It was a shock. A week after I left, Mia still hadn't reached out to me, not even to ask where I'd gone. She wasn't home the day Jonathan confessed, so we never even got to say goodbye. I waited for her to contact me, but when she didn't, I sent her a message, explaining why I'd left and that her father had cheated. To my disbelief, she said she already knew and wasn't bothered by it because, in her words, it didn't involve her. I couldn't believe it. I started thinking Jonathan had gotten to her first and spun the story in his favor. I reached out to her repeatedly, hoping to clear the air, but it became clear she wasn't on my side, despite knowing the truth. Still, she was my daughter, so I tried my best to reconnect, even while juggling the divorce and my job. But whenever we met up, she'd barely engage, glued to her phone the entire time. Over the next few weeks, she stopped responding to my texts altogether, freezing me out entirely. Then, a week ago, I saw the final blow, a post on Instagram of Mia hugging Alicia with the caption "Mom" and a heart emoji. That was it. I was losing both my husband and my daughter to the same woman. I completely lost it. I called Mia over and over, 17 times until she finally answered. When she did, she sounded irritated, but I didn't care. I demanded an explanation for the post. Her response, "It's none of your business, and stop stalking my account." I was furious. She had a public account, and I'm her biological mother. I told her how disgusting it was that she was taking her father's side after everything he'd done to me. And now, to top it off, she was calling his mistress "Mom." She coldly responded that I was overreacting and that if I didn't like it, she'd just block me. And then she did. My own daughter cut me off, telling me I should focus on my own future, just like she was with her new family. I was devastated. Mia and I had always been close, despite some normal mother-daughter differences, but I never expected this kind of betrayal. I cried for what felt like hours after that call, but eventually, something in me snapped, and I decided I wasn't going to let people keep walking all over me. So, I did something drastic. Jonathan and I had set aside a substantial college fund for Mia. Half was from me, half from him. I'd been saving for years, but I realized that Mia didn't seem to care about me or my sacrifices, so why should I keep saving for her? I decided to take that money and do something for myself. I used it to buy the house I'd always wanted, a beautiful place I'd had my eye on for years, but Jonathan and Mia never wanted to move. Within days, I closed the deal. I was moving in at the end of the month. I posted a picture of the house on social media to announce my fresh start. Soon after, Jonathan texted, asking how I'd afforded it. I didn't bother lying. I told him I'd used Mia's college fund. He blew up, accusing me of being irresponsible and using the money out of spite because Mia had sided with him. But I was done caring. Mia had made it clear she didn't need me, so I figured she didn't need my money either. I hung up on him, feeling no guilt. But Mia wasn't done. An hour later, she called me in tears, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. Mia kept asking how I could betray her, insisting she'd always put me first. It was petty of me, but I shot back, asking if she still considered me a priority after she blocked me for expressing my hurt over her calling Alicia "Mom." She dismissed it as a harmless gesture meant to make Alicia feel welcomed in our family, but I couldn't wrap my head around how she could overlook the fact that Jonathan had cheated on me. Mia claimed she just wanted to balance her old family with her new one. I felt the same way, but it was her choice to turn her back on me first, even though I was the victim here. As she cried, telling me she never expected her mother to take revenge like this, my heart began to ache. The sound of her hiccuping sobs took me back to her childhood, a sound I hadn't heard in years. I realized I might have gone too far. Mia apologized for whatever she had done, but then she hung up, leaving me with an uncomfortable mix of guilt and confusion about my actions. Update 1. I recently moved into my new house, finally settling in after a few hectic days. I reclaimed everything I'd bought from our old home, But I ran into Jonathan, Alicia, and Mia while I was there. They were living together now, which stung. Jonathan had clearly moved on faster than I expected. He and Alicia ignored me, but that just made my job easier. I had no desire to engage with them, especially after everything that had transpired. As I was about to get into my car, Mia stopped me. For the first time, she tried to talk, asking how I planned to contribute to her college fund. No apology, no acknowledgement of the hurt she'd caused. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove away, feeling an overwhelming sense of disappointment. Over the past few days, I reflected on our relationship. We'd grown distant, but I had hoped she'd stand by me when it mattered. Instead, she chose to side with Jonathan and Alicia, leaving me feeling abandoned by my own daughter. Update 2. Despite my efforts to move on, Mia has been relentless, texting me every other day to ask if I've changed my mind about her college fund. I've ignored her for nearly a week, but today I finally responded. I told her the money was already spent, and I wasn't about to feel guilty for making my choice. I reminded her that her priorities were clear, and it wasn't fair for her to expect me to support her financially after the way she treated me. I suggested that perhaps the woman she called Mom could contribute instead. Mia shot back, saying it was just a post and I was being too triggered over it. To me, it was more than a post, it felt like a betrayal. Jonathan had chosen Alicia, and it felt like Mia had followed suit. I was heartbroken that she could overlook the gravity of her father's actions. I poured my feelings into a long message, only for her to respond that I needed to get over it. Frustrated, I muted her notifications and archived our chat. I couldn't block her, but if she kept testing my patience, I might just consider it. Update 3. 2 weeks had passed since our last conversation when I unexpectedly encountered Jonathan and Mia outside my office. They were leaning against his car, waiting for me to leave. I initially planned to ignore them, but they approached, insisting I owed them an explanation. I told them to leave me alone, but Mia sulked and insisted I needed to explain myself. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet them at a nearby restaurant, determined to set the record straight. As soon as we sat down, I launched into my side without allowing interruptions. I told them that despite nearly 20 years together, Jonathan had betrayed me, and instead of showing any empathy, Mia had chosen to align with Alicia. It was as if she wanted to make me feel worse during an already painful time. I looked directly at Mia and said, after everything that's happened, I struggled to recognize Mia as the daughter I had raised. If she truly were my daughter, she wouldn't have said and done the things she had. It was all so revolting, and I felt an overwhelming urge to distance myself from her and the others. They were morally bankrupt, and associating with them felt like a stain on my soul. I told Mia that I was still willing to entertain her because she was my daughter, but I made it clear that if someone more ruthless were in my position, they would have cut her off after that post. She was fortunate to even have a chance to talk to me. Not many would extend that courtesy after such a betrayal. As I finished speaking, I noticed tears brimming in Mia's eyes, and I knew she was on the verge of breaking down. I quickly grabbed my burrito, paid the bill, and left, unwilling to appear weak. It was difficult to walk away without saying another word, especially knowing I had hurt her. Since then, they hadn't reached out, and I doubted they would. I had made it abundantly clear why the college fund was gone, so I figured there'd be no more questions about that. In a few days, I would meet Jonathan for the negotiations, and the thought of continuing to see him weighed heavily on me. I was uncertain about the state of my relationship with Mia. I could tell my words had impacted her deeply. Update 4. A month passed since my last encounter with Mia, and I had almost come to terms with the possibility of never seeing her again. Jonathan had ceased his fight during our negotiations, likely influenced by our last conversation at the restaurant. I realized that when he first mentioned Alicia, I didn't scream or retaliate. I simply walked away, leaving the past behind. I hadn't allowed myself to fully confront the guilt and disappointment I felt until that day. Mia and I had gone silent for a month, and as her college departure approached, I found myself reminiscing through old photo albums. The images of her as a child made my heart ache. I imagined Alicia taking my place on move-in day, and the thought was unbearable. Yet, I felt powerless to change the situation. 3 days ago, an email from Mia arrived, filled with raw emotion. She apologized for her behavior, explaining that she had been trying to please Jonathan in hopes of getting a car and an apartment with friends. She hadn't known how to navigate the situation without hurting me and hoped to reconnect once she got what she wanted. Now, She recognized that nothing was worth sacrificing our relationship and expressed a strong desire for me to be there as she started college. I found myself at a crossroads, unsure whether to forgive her. The idea of her actions being motivated by something as trivial as a car felt unjustifiable. I understood her desire for independence and fun, but the way she had hurt me was intentional and deeply painful. Yet, she had apologized, which was a step forward. I held off on responding to her email, still wrestling with my feelings. Despite everything, I missed her and longed to return to the closeness we once shared, or at least to try to rebuild it. Update 5. Hello, everyone. Thank you for your support and messages throughout this journey. It truly means the world to me. Mia and I have begun to mend our relationship. With her college departure imminent, I finally replied to her email yesterday. I shared how her actions made me feel like a failure as a mother and that it would take time for me to heal. But the truth is, I couldn't bear to keep her away from me any longer. She was my only child. I know some might view my decision as a weakness, but enough was enough. There had been plenty of punishment and resentment in our family, and I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. I chose to reconcile not out of obligation but from a genuine desire to reconnect. I wouldn't have been able to forgive her if I weren't her mother, but I decided to let it go this once, on the condition that she would never treat me, or anyone who loves her, that way again. After our heartfelt conversation on the phone, we both ended up in tears. It felt cathartic, a much-needed emotional release. Mia promised she wouldn't repeat her mistakes and emphasized how much she wanted to repair our bond. We plan to explore online therapy sessions together because it's clear we have a lot to unpack. Mia also informed me that she asked Jonathan to stay home. She wanted me to help her settle in at college. I was touched by her choice and relieved that she was firm in her decision, despite Jonathan and Alicia's disappointment. I wouldn't say everything is back to normal, but I have hope that, with time and effort, we can rebuild our relationship. I genuinely wish for that future.